Welcome everyone. Thanks for attending. I'm going to talk about building amazing mobile games. And the way I want to encourage you to ensure they're amazing is by involving gamers at every step of the development process through a process that we call rapid user testing. But first things first, who am I? My name is John, and I'm a co-founder at PickFu. I do not build mobile games, but I do admittedly spend many hours playing them. Now, this is one of the most insightful sentences I've read about gaming. Players want to kill time, but they don't want to waste time. Players are open to spending hours on end with your game, and they welcome a certain level of repetition. My own game stats can attest. But they don't want to waste time, which means they don't want to feel as though they're not getting anywhere, or playing with characters they don't even like or aren't charmed by, or performing tasks that they don't want to do. So, what makes a mobile game addictive? Here are a couple of elements. Number one is a sticky name. Like, if you think about it, would you rather play Candy Crush or a copycat that I found on the App Store called Cartoon Crush Pop Block Puzzle? Enticing characters, fun scoring mechanics, attractive colors, animations and sounds. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know here. But the main point of this discussion, however, is this. What's the best way to know what makes a mobile game addictive? So, if you want to know what makes a mobile game addictive, maybe you should ask a bunch of mobile game addicts. Okay, but how? Finding mobile gamers to give you feedback can be hard, and it's usually done way too late. You can't get to playtesting until your prototype is playable. You don't see download numbers until you're up in the app stores, and you don't get engagement metrics until your game has amassed a lot of players. But by the time you're done prototyping or going up in the app stores, much of the game has already been decided. It's probably too late to rethink your storyline or redesign the overall look of the game. So I'm going to introduce a method of testing that you can perform in the earliest napkin sketch stages of game development. It's called PickFu. So what is PickFu? PickFu is a platform that acts like an online focus group. In a PickFu poll, you ask just one question, and this question can be about any of your ideas, such as a character design, your app's icon, or even an animation or sound effect. We have a group of over 10,000 US-based respondents that we call the PickFu panel. They're ready to provide honest, written feedback within a few minutes of your question being posted. And the feedback they provide can guide you on how to develop and market your game to target players. And I'd love to get into this. The process behind PickFu starts by putting together a question. The question can be anything. The site offers a bunch of suggestions, or you can write your own. And once you've done that, you can choose who should answer the question. Maybe your game is targeted towards women, or a certain age group, or maybe you only want to reach people who use Android or iOS devices, or maybe just those who like puzzle or strategy games. Then, our system reaches out to everyone in our network that meets the criteria you specified. Their answers start coming in immediately so you can make database decisions the very same day, and we'll dive into this. We call this process rapid user testing. Now, by rapid, we mean simple one-question polls completed in minutes and not days. They start at just $1 per response, and it's as cheap as $50 for a single poll. When we say user, we're not referring to user testing as in play testing, but users as in your target users, the kind of people you want to play your game. They're paid to answer polls and incentivized to do a good job. And now you can target them by their gaming interests, such as and how much they've spent in the App Store or what kind of games they like to play or already play. And finally, when we say testing, you're essentially collecting the panel's feedback on whatever you show them. You can show them images, text, video, or audio. Every respondent writes an explanation, so you get both a qualitative and quantitative picture of how your ideas are faring. And it's all private. Every respondent is under NDA, and the results are only shared with the people you share them with. So that all sounds great, but what does this mean in the real world? Let's take a look. So remember this slide? I want to run through this again, and I'm going to go through a few examples of how both huge AAA game companies and small indie developers have used PickFu to make sure their games succeed. First up, a name that sticks. So a few years ago, an indie developer named Michael Cowden was working on a game called Outrun the 80s. And then a friend in marketing suggested a different name, Super 80s World. Not bad, Mike thought, but is it better than his favorite, which was Outrun the 80s? So he asked his friends, he asked his family. But as he later told us, the problem with this method is that they aren't necessarily the target audience, or the most likely to be honest with you. They don't want to hurt your feelings. So instead he turned to PickFu. Mike ran a poll comparing Outrun the 80s against Super 80s World. 50 people voted and offered a written explanation. They both chose the option that they preferred and also explained why. Now, Super 80s World won, but only by a small margin. What was surprising, however, was what the people who voted for Super 80s World said in the comments. Respondents wrote comments like, "It reminds me of Mario. I love the 80s and Super 80s World sound more exciting. And I don't like Outrun the 80s because it makes it sound like you're trying to run away from the 80s, and that was my childhood. I like option B because it celebrates the fun 1980s. Other helpful comments mentioned that Outrun the 80s sounded like a racing game, which it is absolutely not. So after the test, Michael wrote that he could immediately tell that Super 80s World communicated the game concept much better. The folks that liked that name understood what the game was about and, more importantly, wanted to play it. So this poll took less than 1 hour to complete on PickFu. Now let's talk a little bit more about naming, because I consider your game's name to be a crucial marketing asset. The best game names tend to be short, memorable, pronounceable, and easily incorporated in everyday speech. And it's especially important to test your names before you enter a market that speaks a language that's different from your native tongue. Obviously, if your target audience is US gamers, then it makes all the sense in the world to test with US consumers. At the moment, all PickFu panelists are in the US, but by next year, we hope to introduce more markets available for feedback. Okay, so what else makes a mobile game addictive? Enticing characters that you want to be. And what makes a character enticing can depend on the art style, clothing, facial expression. For some games, you might want to be a cute and cuddly character, or for others, you want to be a badass. In this example, Beetroot Labs, which is a studio out of Latvia, partnered with MMA fighter Conor McGregor to launch a mobile strategy game. Excuse me. Obviously, McGregor's character would take center stage, but what other characters would help players want to download the game? Let's see. So, Beetroot Lab used PickFu to ask 100 Americans who had spent money in the App Store, which game character would make you most want to download and play a mobile strategy game. The poll respondents ranked 6 different characters from their first choice to their 6th choice. The rankings were completed in 1 hour and 10 minutes. Of the 6 characters, this character named Spectre won, and the team used this data to inform its marketing. Now, on the website for Dystopia, look who's featured just as prominently as Conor McGregor. That's our friend Spectre, the winning character from that previous poll. Now, what about the star of the game, Conor McGregor? He was obviously going to be a big draw for this game, But the team at Beetroot Labs couldn't just take it for granted that they knew how to present him. They spent a lot of time deciding on their app icon, running 5 separate PickFu polls to help decide which version to launch with. The app icon is an important marketing asset because it's a prominent image in search results and listings. And according to Store Maven, your app icon can potentially increase your app's conversion rate by a median of 11% on the Google Play Store and 18% on the Apple App Store. So the first poll compared 6 different icons with Conor McGregor's character against various colored backgrounds and different framing. Some versions were a close-up on his face, while others were more of a medium shot. Since the results of the first test were close, in the second test, Beetroot Lab kept the framing of the character all the same and just tested colors only. The bright blue background was the most popular, followed by purple and then yellow. Next, Beetroot took the top 3 colors, blue, purple, yellow, and tried 2 different versions of the character, one with his hands gripping his vest and the other with his arms extended. The blue background wins again, and the version with his hands gripping the vest edged out the version with his arm extended. And then to be sure, Beetroot took the winning pose and tested it against different colored backgrounds, and then once again blue wins out. So now the team is confident. And finally, the team tested one final thing, Conor's tattoo coloring. I blew it up so you can see it up close, because it's a subtle difference on the coloring of the tattoo. The results were close too, but in the end, the darker treatment of the tattoo won. That one right there. And look at the icon that Beetroot ultimately launched with. This series of icon polls is a good example of how you can use testing to iterate. Because the results from PickFu come in so fast, you can test different hypotheses and create new versions to test all in the same day. And like I said before, test, and then iterate. Next up on our mobile game addiction checklist, fun scoring mechanics. So getting a high score or earning a bunch of virtual money and helping and hearing all the bells and whistles is a part of what makes games so fun. In that vein, the mobile app company Gawkbox wanted to name its virtual currency. The app tested 2 names for its in-app currency, Goins and G-Bucks. 50 mobile gamers weighed in. Goins had some unintended and unfortunate associations. More people associated it with groins rather than coins. And this one is my favorite comment. When I hear G-Bucks, I immediately think of the Fortnite currency V-Bucks. But when I hear Goins, I think of a nasty medical condition. More people thought it sounded dirty or cheesy or easy to make fun of. We're all essentially kids at heart, and these results cut across age and gender. You can examine all of that on a PickFu poll result. Everyone pretty much agreed that Goins was a terrible idea. Now imagine if this app had launched and tried to get users to collect Goins instead of G-Bucks. To respondents, G-Bucks had a few good things going for it. It sounded more like money or currency and something desirable. And it also reinforced the app name and strengthened the overall branding. And so as one respondent said, it just makes more sense to me. So I've shown you a bunch of PickFu polls and different ideas that you can test before you have even a working build. Now I want to show you where I think PickFu fits in the overall testing approach. Other sessions that you might be attending will talk about testing, the tests you're already performing, and analytics you're already collecting. And I believe that is all still valuable. I'm not recommending you stop anything that you're already doing. But what I think is very valuable about PickFu is that it doesn't just give you numbers or the what, because every respondent provides written feedback. It helps you understand the why. And what's also important is that when do you collect this feedback? Eventually, you're going to hear qualitative feedback in forums and in reviews. But if no one's downloading your game, or if your game is still being developed, you don't have existing users to turn to. So that's where PickFu fits in this unique quadrant where you can understand the why even before you launch your game. And now, I want to talk about another game that illustrates this point very well, because they're using rapid user testing as a complement to the testing they're already doing. This game, Ready Chef Go, is launched by MojiWorks, and it launched on Snapchat in December 2019. As one of the only few third-party developers on Snap Games, MojiWorks relies on constant feedback from its 65 million players. Jen Bolton is MojiWorks' VP of Player Insights, and she calls herself the Player Whisperer because she's constantly looking at A/B tests on Snapchat. And those tests provide the what, but they don't provide the why, like why players like or dislike certain features. And she can't A/B test icons in Snapchat's live environment. And even if she could, the process is lengthy, and there isn't always time to run live tests and manually review results. So for example, like when it comes to seasonal content. So last winter, Ready Chef Go released a holiday theme called Jingle Burgers. Before the release, MojiWorks wanted to understand which splash screen best communicated the game's key messages. Most of the game's players are young women, so in this PickFu poll, 50 women ages 18 to 34 were asked which icon they would tap first. Instead of ranking the options 1, 2, 3, which we had mentioned before, this poll is called a head-to-head poll, where every option is put up against every other option, and PickFu tallies up all the votes to declare a winner, which in this case was option B. Player numbers went up right as soon as the seasonal assets launched on the platform. And Jen Bolton, the Player Whisperer, said that players are actively looking for holiday-related content, and so seasonal graphics tend to draw a lot of taps. PickFu testing helped us find the most appealing direction for our seasonal assets, so we could stand out in that holiday-fied game list in Snapchat. And they work so well that we're using them again this year, and they are. So I've gone through a couple of examples of how user testing improves your game, but without ASO, App Store optimization, no one's going to find your game in the first place. One of the challenges with App Store listings is that any change you make, you have to wait for the App Store's approval. So one big benefit of a testing platform outside of the App Store is that you don't have to wait for several days for external approval. So PickFu can help you in all these areas of improving and optimizing your listing. We've already talked about app names and icons, but you can also use PickFu to see how your ideas stack up against the games that are already in the App Store category, or you can try different versions of your subtitle or app description. And crucially, you should ensure that your screenshots and video assets are as strong as they could be. You might be familiar with the game Brawl Stars. We took a look at its listing just for a demo, and we asked 50 mobile gamers who have spent money in the App Store which screenshot would most make them want to download this kind of game. You'll see that option D placed first, followed by B and then C. What's interesting is that at the time that we ran this poll, Brawl Stars was actually leading with option A, which our results showed was the weakest option. Here you can see a couple of comments. If I was optimizing this listing, I might reorder them in terms of popularity and try it out. And then I might use the results to iterate by taking this winning screenshot and creating variants with different leading headlines, or perhaps looking at whether the prominent yellow works better. We also took a look at the listing description, and so keep in mind on the App Store the description gets truncated, so that leading copy is what's the most important. Battling in multiplayer games won this poll, followed closely by Constantly Evolving, Become the Star Player, and Last Unlock and Upgrade Brawlers. And based on this information, you might want to reorder the description and perhaps just let the results and the comments about what people like inform the screenshots. If you only rely on App Store analytics, you'll see taps and downloads, but you won't necessarily understand what players are reacting to. So as a quick recap, if you want to know what makes a mobile game addictive, you should ask a bunch of mobile game addicts. You should break out of your bubble and hear from the people you want to download and play your game. And the earlier and more often that you can involve them in your development process, the better. You don't have to wait for working prototypes when you launch on the App Store to test. You can start testing with real gamers at the idea phase. Get player feedback at every stage. See how people feel about your concepts, perform competitive analysis, and iterate on your designs. And as you move to production, make sure your UI and animation are as good as it can be. Remember, you want people to spend hours looking at what you've been making. As you launch, Get feedback on your listing assets like your app icon, screenshots, and app store description. Test any video such as trailers or TV ads. And if you need help getting started, just reach out to me or anyone on my team. And if you scan this QR code or use the coupon DevGAMM, you can try PickFu for free. All right, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, John, I see that your speech was a huge success. A lot of questions are dropping down the lane. A little waterfall here. Are you ready to answer them?
Sure thing.
So let's start from the first question. So the first question was is how is the choice of those how is the choice of those who will evaluate the game is made?
So PickFu is a do-it-yourself platform. You can go directly to the website right now and just start a poll. When you are creating that poll, you get to choose who those people are, who that target demographic is. So for game developers, you can choose a gaming platform. I mean, we have console platforms as well, or Android, iOS, how much they've spent in the App Store, favorite types of mobile games, and so on. So it's all do-it-yourself.
Oh, that's nice. So it's easy to reach and easy to check.
Oh, absolutely. Most polls, you can set up a poll in about a minute and then get that live in front of gamer audiences.
That's nice. Before I ask the next question, I want to say that thank you for being here with us today live, despite the time zones and the time zone difference. So
I'm happy to. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So we got it. We're in evening here in Minsk, and John is beginning his day at 7:30.
Good morning to all, or good evening.
Yeah. So thank you very much. As you can see, DevGAMM Online connecting people worldwide.
Great.
Okay, so the next question, I just wanted to say. So the next question is how to make a perfect task for a test. So maybe you have any clues?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be challenging to figure out the right question to ask. We try to make it simple. We have a guided poll builder. So we have pre-built questions for game developers. You can just click through and say, game developer, I'm testing, app store icon or character art, and there will be guided questions for you to choose from. Otherwise, you can fully customize your question. And generally, when you're doing that, I recommend that you test only one thing at a time. So whether it's color, style, animation, ask a clear question. And then we offer a lot of examples on the site for you to see how other game developers have tested in the past. And finally, we have a whole team of customer success representatives who you can hop on a call and they can help you strategize to get the most out of the platform and understand all the different ways that you can use PickFu to improve your game.
Okay, that's a very fulfilling questions, I think. Answer, I think. I'm so sorry. That's it. That's the thing for the day. Again, I want to say thank you to you and tell you a little bit, everybody who's here,